The endless storm roared beneath the floating city of Glassbound, its fury a constant reminder of the fragile prison encapsulating them all. Lira stood at the rim of the great glass dome, the translucent barrier humming faintly under her fingertips. Below, the tempest churned endlessly, lightning arcing like jagged veins across the darkened sky, thunder rolling in waves that seemed to shake the very core of the city. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, sharp and electric, and the glass beneath her feet vibrated slightly with each distant crack of thunder. Despite the danger and the ever-present threat of the spheres shattering, Lira felt an inexplicable pull toward the storm. It was as if the tempest itself was calling to her, whispering secrets only she could hear. Back in her quarters, the whispers became clearer. No longer just a distant murmur, but a melodic hum threading through her thoughts. It was a voice both soothing and sinister, threading through the labyrinth of her mind. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, twisting and curling like smoke, challenging her will and stirring the latent power she had barely begun to understand. Lira, the voice cooed, a seductive tone that promised release and dominion. Join me. Let the storm's fury be yours. Free yourself from these fragile walls. Her breath caught, pulse quickening as the voice slithered deeper into her consciousness. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms, grounding herself in the reality of the glass dome and the rebellion that counted on her. She was no mere pawn for the storm's endless fury. The next day, in the dim confines of the rebel hideout, Marek's face was drawn with concern. The candlelight flickered across the stone walls, casting long, restless shadows. Thunder rumbled distantly, a grim soundtrack to their tense conversation. The storm's magic is reaching deeper into the city and into you, Marek said, voice low but urgent. I've seen what it does to those who listen too closely. They lose themselves. Lira met his gaze, determination hardening her features. I won't let it control me. I have to be stronger than that. For everyone. Her voice was steady, but inside, the battle raged fiercely. That night, as rain lashed against the glass, a vision unfolded before her, a figure shimmering in the shifting mist of lightning and shadow. Lira, the ethereal woman from whispered legends, appeared with eyes like storm clouds, her voice a haunting melody. The storm is a part of you, Lira, Lira said, her form wavering like a flame in wind. But it is also a cage. To master it, you must face what lies within and without. Lira reached out, the cold light washing over her, and felt the weight of choice pressing upon her soul. To yield to the storm was to risk losing herself entirely, but to resist meant standing alone against a force that had shaped the very world they lived in. The night deepened, and with it, the echoes from the storm grew louder. Lira closed her eyes, centering herself, drawing strength from the rebellion. From Marek, from the fragile hope that they could shatter the old order, without becoming prisoners of the tempest's rage. Her fingers brushed the glass, and though the storm called with 1,000 voices, she whispered back with a single vow: she would not be broken. But the storm was patient, and it was not done with her yet. The air was thick with electricity as Lira ascended the highest spire of the floating city, the glass beneath her feet humming with a fragile resonance. The endless storm below churned with furious intensity, its dark clouds swirling like a living tempest eager to swallow everything above. Around her, the glass sphere that encased their city was marred with glowing fissures, fractures that ran like veins across the gleaming surface, each one a testament to the fragile prison they inhabited. Lira's heart pounded fiercely, the weight of the choice before her pressed down like the very storm itself. This city, she whispered to the howling wind, has been trapped in its own reflection for too long. Below, the city stirred with uncertainty. The rebellion had ignited hope among the oppressed, but the ruling elite clung desperately to their inherited power, unwilling to surrender the delicate control the sphere's magic bestowed. Lira's discovery of her lineage and burgeoning power had shifted the balance irrevocably. Now, the final moment had come. In a dimly lit chamber deep within the city, Kalon and Alicia stood locked in fierce debate. Candles flickered against the cold stone walls, their light casting elongated shadows that danced with the tension between them. "We cannot afford recklessness," Kalon insisted, his voice low but urgent. "If Lira shatters this sphere completely, we may lose everything: lives, history, the city itself." Alicia's gaze was unwavering, her voice calm yet resolute. "And if we do nothing, the city remains a cage. The people will suffer under the glassy tyranny forever. Lyra's power could bring about a new dawn, but it requires boldness, not fear." Their words echoed the turmoil within Lyra's own mind. She was both the key and the lock, the inheritor of a magic that could either enslave or liberate. The glassmaker's warning haunted her still. The sphere's power was a double-edged blade, and wielding it demanded sacrifice. Descending into the ancient chamber where the glassmaker awaited, Lira inhaled the scent of molten glass and old magic. The air shimmered with latent power, and the artisan's eyes gleamed with timeless knowledge as he spoke. "This sphere is not merely a prison," he said quietly. "It is a covenant, a balance forged in sacrifice. To break it is to unravel the very fabric of our city's soul. But to control it is to bear a burden heavier than any can imagine." Lyra's fingers traced the cool edges of the largest crack, feeling the raw magic thrumming beneath her touch. The decision weighed on her to fracture the sphere further, risking chaos and destruction, or to seize control. Reshaping the city in her vision, but risking becoming the very oppressor she despised. The storm outside reached a crescendo, wind howling through the cracks and shaking the glass dome. Citizens below stopped their hurried steps and lifted their faces skyward, eyes wide with hope and fear. With a steady breath, Lira extended her hand, pushing her power into the fracture. Light burst forth, blinding and brilliant, the sphere trembling with the force of her will. The glass groaned, a sound like the earth itself crying out. Chaos erupted. Shards shimmered, magical energy crackled, and the city held its breath. But in that moment of rupture, there was also a spark, a fragile promise that beyond the shards of glass, beyond the storm and the struggle, a new future awaited. Lira's choice had set the city on a path where freedom and control, hope and fear, power and sacrifice would forever intertwine. And as the echoes of the breaking sphere faded into the howling storm, the question remained: would this fractured dawn bring salvation, or the end of all they had ever known? The storm's fury was relentless, but so was Lyra's resolve. The fate of the floating city balanced precariously on the edge of a shattered dream, and only time would tell whether the light she unleashed would heal or consume. The air was thick with the acrid scent of smoke and the sharp tang of shattered glass as the city's fractured dome trembled overhead. Below, the once gleaming plaza, now marred by cracks, spiderwebbing through the glass beneath their feet, was alive with the roar of rebels and the cold precision of the ruling guard. Torches flickered in the gathering dusk, their flames casting long, dancing shadows against the fractured walls of the floating city. Lira stood at the forefront, her green eyes alight with fierce resolve, every breath she took heavy with the weight of the impending storm. Around her, the rebellion's ragged banners whipped in the rising wind, and the chants of the oppressed swelled into a clamorous wave. Myra, ever steady, moved beside her, sword drawn and voice low but firm. "This is it, Lira. No turning back now." Lira nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The city's glass sphere, once a symbol of protection and control, now felt like a brittle cage threatening to shatter beneath the strain of their uprising. She could feel the latent power humming beneath her skin, the magic she had inherited from ancestors long forgotten, pulsing through her veins like wildfire. From the shadows emerged Councillor Varron, his silver hair glinting as he surveyed the rebel lines with cold, calculating eyes. His voice cut through the clamor, sharp as broken glass. "You threaten the city's very life, girl. Surrender, and your people may yet be spared." Lyra's reply was a breath, steady and unwavering. "The city's life is its people, not your throne." Suddenly, chaos erupted. Elias, once a trusted scout among the rebels, appeared behind Lira, blade gleaming in the fading light. The shock was profound, a dagger not just in flesh but in trust. Their clash was swift and brutal. Metal rang against metal, sparks flying as they fought with desperate fury amid the shattered streets. "Why, Elias?" Lira demanded between strikes, pain sharpening her voice. His eyes flickered with regret and fear. "I did what I had to, for survival." But survival at what cost? As their blades locked once more, Lira felt her magic surge uncontrollably. The glass beneath them quivered, fine cracks racing outward like spiderwebs. She broke free, stepping back, her hands rising as raw energy spilled from her fingertips. With a cry that echoed through the city, she shattered a massive section of the sphere. Brilliant shards cascaded down, glittering like deadly rain, forcing both friend and foe to scatter. The explosion of magic rocked the city, the glass dome groaning as it began to fracture irreparably. The rebellion pressed forward amidst the turmoil, but the cost was clear. Buildings trembled, and the once sturdy glass pathways cracked and splintered beneath their feet. Lyra's heart pounded with each pulse of power she unleashed, the strain weighing heavily on her mind and body. As the dust settled, silence fell over the battlefield. Rebels and rulers alike stared upward at the fractured dome, a symbol of both their liberation and the devastation wrought. Lyra's gaze lingered on the jagged edges of the broken glass, her breath heavy with sorrow and resolve. Myra approached, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "We've won the battle, but the war is just beginning." Lira nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting the first glimmers of dawn breaking beyond the shattered sphere. The city was broken, bloodied and uncertain, but free, and in that fragile hope lay the seeds of a new future. Yet, as the echoes of battle faded, a lingering question remained: how much of herself had Lira sacrificed in the name of freedom, and what legacy would she leave in the glass and blood of Glassbound? The storm beyond rumbled ominously, but for the first time, the city faced it not as prisoners, but as masters of their fate. And as the sun rose, casting fractured light through the shards of the dome, Lira knew that the true test was only just beginning. The morning light filtered through the fractured glass dome, casting fractured rainbows across the ruined cityscape below. Lira stood on the steps of what once had been the Grand Council Hall, its pillars cracked and its banners tattered. The emblem of the glass-bound crown shattered and scattered like the hopes of the city itself. Smoke still lingered in the air, a ghostly veil that mingled with the scent of ash and damp stone. Around her, the murmurs of survivors wove through the streets, soft, tentative voices that spoke of loss, of fear, but also of the faintest spark of hope. She drew a deep breath, the cool air filling her lungs, and closed her eyes briefly. The weight she carried was immense, more than the physical strain of wielding the sphere's power, more than the battles fought or the enemies defeated. It was the responsibility of leadership, the crushing realization that every choice she made could either mend or shatter the fragile piece that now hung in the balance. Unan approached quietly, his footsteps muted against the cracked marble. His sharp eyes met hers with a steadying calm, a silent reminder that she was not alone in this burden. "We have reports from the southern districts," he said softly, unfolding a worn map streaked with notes and markings. "They're beginning to clear debris and tend to the injured. Supplies are running low, but the people are resilient." Lira nodded, taking the map and tracing the routes with a finger. "We must prioritize rebuilding the water purifiers. Without clean water, the city won't last the week. The council chambers are still unstable," Ewan added. "We may need to find a temporary meeting place to negotiate with the factions." Her gaze lifted to the skyline, where the fractured glass sphere still glimmered faintly against the storm-scarred sky. The cracks had multiplied since the last battle, each fracture a reminder of the city's precarious state. Yet within those fractures lay the possibility of renewal, of reshaping their world. Later that day, in the dim quiet of the ruined library, Lira faced Maris. The former council member's eyes held a mix of defiance and regret, her posture rigid but respectful. The scent of old parchment and dust filled the chamber, a poignant backdrop to a meeting heavy with history. "I never wanted it to come to this," Maris confessed, voice low. "The ruling class failed the city, yes, but chaos is no better." Lira studied her for a long moment. "We both want the city to survive, but survival means change, true change, not just shifting power from one hand to another." Maris's gaze softened. "Then we must find a way forward together." The days that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and tireless efforts to unify the fractured factions. Kale, the fierce voice of the common people, gathered crowds in the battered square, his words igniting sparks of hope and courage among the weary citizens. "We have endured the storm," Kale declared, his voice ringing out over the gathered crowd, "and now we must endure the dawn. Together we will rebuild, not as prisoners of glass, but as masters of our destiny." Lira listened from the sidelines, the fire in Kale's voice stirring something deep within her. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with risk and the possibility of new betrayals. Yet, in this moment, amidst the ruins and the rising light, she dared to believe in the fragile promise of a new beginning. As night fell, Lira stood once more beneath the fractured dome, hands resting lightly on the cool glass. The city was broken, but not defeated, and neither was she. The crown she wore, whether fractured or whole, was hers to bear, and with it, the fate of all who called the floating city home. The choices she had made, the alliances forged and broken, had led to this fragile peace. But the echoes of battle still whispered through the streets, and the true test of her leadership was only beginning. Would she be able to unite a city divided by years of oppression and war? Or would the fractures deepen, splintering the Glassbound beyond repair? Only time would tell. But for now, Lira allowed herself a moment of quiet resolve. The future was hers to shape, and she would not falter. She turned away from the dawn-lit ruins, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the crown she bore was not just a symbol of power, but a beacon of hope amid the shattered glass. End of. The first light of dawn filtered gently through the remnants of the storm clouds, casting a soft golden glow across the floating city of Glassbound. From her vantage point, atop the newly stabilized glass dome, Lira breathed in the crisp morning air, feeling it mingle with the faint hum of residual magic still coursing through the sphere's surface. The city below was alive in a way it had not been for many years, vibrant with the cautious optimism of its inhabitants. Their faces turned upward toward the sun as if greeting a long-lost friend. Lyra's gaze swept across the market square, where vendors from all walks of life had gathered. The stalls were laden with bright fruits, fresh baked bread, and intricate crafts fashioned from the shards and fragments of the old sphere. Children darted between legs, their laughter ringing clear and pure against the backdrop of the city's restored vibrancy. The air was filled with the scent of blooming glass flowers, a new cultivar born from the fusion of magic and nature, a symbol of the fragile yet resilient hope taking root in Glassbound. Yet, beneath the surface of this emergent peace, Lira felt the steady pull of responsibility weighing upon her. The fractures in the glass were not merely physical. They mirrored the fractures in the city's soul. A new dawn was rising, yes, but it demanded more than mere survival. It required rebuilding trust, forging new paths, and accepting the cost of freedom. She descended carefully from the dome, the smooth surface cool beneath her boots, and made her way to the council chamber. The room, once a bastion of exclusivity, now reflected the city's transformed spirit. Enchanted lanterns bathed the space in a warm, flickering light, their glow dancing softly on the polished glass walls etched with the history of Glassbound's creation and trials. Inside, Marek awaited her arrival, seated beside Eli's and Joran. The four represented a microcosm of the city's diverse hopes and challenges. The rebel spirit embodied by Marek's hardened determination, Ellis's quiet grace and reformist zeal born from noble blood, and Joran's pragmatic caution, tempered by years navigating the labyrinth of politics. Their faces bore traces of fatigue from the long days of conflict, but also the unmistakable spark of hope. "The city begins to breathe again," Marek said, his voice low but steady. "But breathing is only the first step. We must decide what life we want to lead." Eli's nodded, her silvery hair catching the light. The old ways were built on fear and separation. We cannot simply replace one hierarchy with another. Joran adjusted his spectacles thoughtfully. Balance will be key. The magic that binds us is a gift and a burden. We must ensure it serves all, not just the few. Lira listened, letting their words settle like seeds in fertile soil. "We have shattered the old sphere," she began, "and in its place, we must craft something new. A city where power is shared, where each voice matters, and where the mistakes of the past do not chain us." The conversation stretched long into the afternoon, weaving through ideas of governance, justice, and the role of magic in society. At times, tensions flared, but always they returned to a common purpose, healing the wounds of Glassbound and shaping a future forged from unity. Later, as evening cloaked the city in shades of violet and silver, Lira slipped away from the gathering to her private chambers. There, she stood before a cracked shard of the glass sphere, the jagged fissures catching the light like veins of molten gold. Her finger traced the fractures gently, each line a memory of loss, of sacrifice, of battles won and lives changed forever. Her thoughts drifted to those she had lost along the way, the friends who had fallen in the uprising, the innocents caught between rebellion and repression, and the countless souls who had suffered beneath the glass prison's cold gaze. Freedom had come at a price that she could never forget. Yet amid the somber reflection, a quiet resolve took root. The dawn was new, and with it, the chance to heal, to build a city not defined by the cracks in its glass, but by the strength of its people and the courage to embrace change. As the first stars began to twinkle in the night sky beyond the sphere, Lira allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenge. But for the first time in a long time, she believed in a future where Glassbound might truly be free. But even as the city healed, deep within the core of the sphere, faint pulses of magic stirred reminders that the balance of power was delicate, and the choices yet to come would demand all of Lira's strength and wisdom. The new dawn was only the beginning. The city's rebirth was a mosaic of small victories and quiet moments. In the weeks that followed, Lira worked tirelessly alongside her allies to weave new threads of trust between the classes. She walked the streets, listening to the stories of those who had suffered, those who dared to hope, and those who feared the future. In the marketplace, she shared laughter with former rivals, their differences softened by shared dreams. In the council chambers, she brokered compromises that balanced magical inheritance with democratic ideals, a delicate dance that tested her patience and resolve. One afternoon, as a gentle rain shimmered against the glass walls, Lira met with Merrick beneath the boughs of a glass tree, its leaves tinkling softly like chimes in the breeze. "There's a long road ahead," Merrick said, "but I see the city waking up. People believe again." She smiled, the weight of leadership lightened by his faith. "We must be vigilant. Freedom is not a destination, it's a journey, one that demands courage every step of the way." The endless storm still roared far below, a reminder of the fragile bubble that held their world aloft. But above, the sun shone brighter each day, illuminating a city reborn from the shards of its past. And Lira, the glass-bound heir, stood ready to guide it toward the uncertain promise of tomorrow.